Dr. Davis and I are so excited because we have partnered together to transform health. And I say this because we have created a project where my organic produce co-op and his clinic are going to start recommending and prescribing fruits and vegetables instead of or in place of prescription drugs. So Dr. Garth, you and I both believe that food is medicine, right?
Yes. The first physician ever, Hippocrates, said that let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. And that's what I really want to teach patients. And not just teach patients, I want to teach doctors. So this effort is not just to show patients to eat fruits and vegetables when you're ill, but I want doctors to start getting that idea too, because I think it's something we've missed in medicine. No doctor sits down with their patient and talks about diet. They reach straight for their prescription pad to write out a medication. And so I want them to think about other ways of treating patients.
Absolutely.
You could absolutely change just about every disease process that we typically see in our Western medicine hospitals simply with diet.
Amen. And that's one of the things that you and I have in common is the way that we eat. We're both vegan and we both promote and we live eating as many raw vegan foods as we possibly can.
Dr. Campbell, you believe that even if animal-based proteins, meat, dairy, etc., are free from contamination, you don't think people should eat them?
No, I don't. I think the closer we get to a plant-based diet, I should say a whole foods plant-based diet, the healthier we're going to be for all of us.
Why, if we could eliminate the contamination, why would we be healthier?
Well, I should say something about myself. Incidentally, I came from a background on a dairy farm milking cows, and then eventually ended up in graduate school now more than 50 years ago, attempting to promote the idea of the good old American diet, high in protein and all the rest, and high in animal foods. And so I got into my research program that was to last for many, many years, funded by NIH, and learned something that I didn't expect to see. It's a long story. I especially...
Briefly, what was the conclusion?
Well, the conclusion was that the closer we get to consuming a whole foods, plant-based diet, the healthier we're going to be on all accounts.
Okay.
I'm Dr. Neil Barnard from the Physicians Committee in Washington, D.C., and I'm on the faculty at the George Washington University School of Medicine. When people follow a vegan diet, it's remarkable to see how many benefits they get. It helps the heart, not just preventing heart problems, but when a person already has heart problems, it can reverse that to a degree. It cleans out the arteries. It can prevent diabetes and improve that to the extent that many people no longer have diabetes anymore, or it gets a lot better. It can help the brain. It can reduce the risk of Alzheimer's disease. It can bring down blood pressure, and perhaps best of all, you can live longer. So all of these things go together.
Are there any benefits to eating meat, fish, and dairy?
The actual opposite is true. Major problems have occurred since humans, in minority but in great part, have moved towards an animal-based diet. I'm involved with a gentleman who healed himself of stage 4 lymphoma on our program, who literally has just completed a documentary that should be out by the beginning of 2009, showing that approximately 40% of greenhouse gases, the biggest concern that all humans should have today, come because we choose to consume animals and use their milk, which is an absurd idea to begin with. We lost our way, but as I pointed out a minute ago, not all of us. Globally, approximately 60% of the world's population is primarily vegetarian still. The anthropologists are way off track when they say we were generally meat consumers and that we moved into eating vegan diets. The truth of the matter is we were vegans and in some cases vegetarian, and a small part of the population, generally in the developed countries. And when you look at the history of why that happened and how it occurred, it was a very calculated process of marketing from both the meat and dairy industry that convinced all of us and most of your listeners there, I know they convinced me even in formal education, that our bodies would literally fall apart without meat. And the only true protein is an animal source protein. This is completely bizarre by the mere fact that every drop of protein on this planet comes via the photosynthesis process, when the plant's leaf picks up the UV rays and converts it into amino acids. So every drop of protein on this earth is from actually a photosynthesis or a plant. Now, when that's understood, and anyone who would like to challenge me on this, I would have a debate with anywhere on the planet, anytime. And we would like people to understand that our bodies, human bodies, were built to eat vegan diets. Now, I stand as a representative, the director of Hippocrates Health Institute, which over 52 years has put hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people from all over the globe on a vegan diet. Many had been given weeks and months to live, and I don't mean a handful, probably 40 to 50% of the people who have come through our doors in 52 years have been given up to die. And tens of thousands of these people have recovered. All of us who consume this vegan diet do not age like the rest of the population does. We do clinical research on humans, not laboratory or computer models. And we are absolutely clear that the best way to get protein is from plant-based diets. And the best plant-based diet is one that has the highest amount of proteins, and that's living food, and germinated nuts, seeds, grains, and beans, and sea vegetables, and freshwater algae, greens and blue-green algae. And that's the bulk of what we've been teaching and telling people to eat forever.
What are the worst effects of eating meat, fish, and dairy?
Well, besides it causing the majority of global warming, which may be fatal for all of us if we don't put the brakes on, it is the #1 cause for catastrophic disease. If you look at my colleague's work, brilliant work, out of Cornell University, Dr. Colin Campbell, Dr. Campbell created the landmark study on human diet, and back in 1990 published the gathering of brilliant information called the China Study, where he pointed out that every man, woman, and child on earth should be a vegan, no animal food consuming human. He supported that with his half-century of work, and why it was called the China Study, interesting enough, is because he is not only a colleague, but a fellow American. In our country, when he proposed that we should tell people not to eat meat, he was pretty much run out of town. And the only government worldwide that was willing to support and allow him to work with the population to improve it were the Chinese, at that point, very much communist Chinese country. And he did the work there, headquartered with a European nutritionist and a Chinese nutritionist, and made models and comparisons to populaces around the world. And thank goodness for the listeners today, that was put together in a compilation, a smaller book, very readable book by the general public, called the China Study, about 5 years ago. So all the readers who are really truly interested in diet and how important diet is and how it causes disease, please read Dr. Campbell's The China Study. In there, there's graphs that if you read that book and continue to consume animal foods, you are really suicidal, because the graphs clearly show that people who consume animal foods and the level they consume increase cancers, cardiovascular disease, diabetes. I believe it contributes to mental illness, and we have wide evidence of this over the decades. We've done studies on this. Beyond all of that, it actually changes the mood of people. That's why if you go to cultures that are pretty much plant-based cultures, compared to the cultures that we're living in now, there is far less aggression, far more compassion. Unthinkable crimes like rape are minimal, if even existent, in some of these cultures. We're in meat-consuming cultures, commonplace. It's considered in Europe and North America that 25% of women at one point in their life will be raped. And you don't see even a vague statistic that's close to that in plant-based consuming cultures. Murder is much higher, and if you look at the countries that consume the highest amount of meats, it also propels more murder. If we're consuming an animal at a time of fear, we as scientists can show you that biochemistry, the adrenaline, goes into the human body, and in part hormonally changes the psychiatry or psychology of an individual. So besides killing you, and making you crazy. I don't know what else to say bad about meat.
Robust would be one way to describe Dr. Ellsworth Wareham. The 100-year-old retired heart surgeon occasionally does his own yard work. He walks regularly, still drives.
You drove here today.
Driving is nothing. I worked till I was 95, assisting, mind you.
Yeah.
I could have done heart surgery, but it wouldn't have been fair to the patient because sometimes you need reserve strength. If you gave me something to memorize, I would memorize it just as quickly now as I would when I was 20.
How is your health?
Oh, superb. I haven't got an acre of pain.
The great-grandfather believes his plant-based diet plays a big part in all this.
If your blood cholesterol is under 150, your chances of having a heart attack are pretty small. Now, my blood cholesterol is 117. There's no chance of me having a heart attack.
So you're heart attack proof.
Let us say I'm dealing in an area which I understand.
Perhaps another key to Wareham's longevity, not letting problems weigh him down.
How big a role does stress play in your life? And
You asked the wrong person. I have a philosophy: you do the best you can, and the things you can't do anything about, don't give any thought to them.
what motivates you nowadays?
I feel that I have to make a contribution. When I was doing surgery, I made it by operating. Now I try to make it by speaking about preventive medicine.
And showing people just what 100 years old can look like. Dr. Sanjay Gupta, CNN, reporting.